Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Are we not supposed to start?
I think so. Apologies. I think I joined in a bit late, so I have no idea what needs to be done.
We are supposed to respond to 2 questions.
Do you remember the questions?
Yes, one is, given your context, which pedagogical approach matters to you? Student-centered or learning-centered? And then 2, what enables or challenges your approach?
Okay.
Can I go?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. My context is that of an academic advisor, where my work involves supporting students with their learning in terms of soft skills and life skills. So the pedagogical approach that I take is learner or student-centered approach. Why student-centered? Because it is the student whom I want to maybe help with improving their life skills and academic skills that they would now use when they approach their studies. So what enables this is the fact that I take, especially for one-on-one consultations, I take a conversational approach where I interact directly with the student on one-on-one basis. If it is a class, I try by all means to make sure that they are involved in the activities that we do in order to help them enhance certain life and academic skills, as well as at the end be empowered to maybe navigate their own study space. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. It sounds like it's like a mentorship in some way, like a guidance. That's very interesting. I mean, where you say you have that one-on-one approach, you sort of have that, that guidance and the learning through conversations, like that dialogic approach. Thought that was very nice.
Okay, so I attend to individuals on one-on-one. I attend to groups.
Oh, okay.
And then I attend to classes as well. So, yeah.
Okay, I see. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I think my context is so I'm a learning experience designer from CLTD. So basically we don't really have a full understanding, or have that reality of the classroom. So we don't necessarily teach, students. We might obviously it's a bit different because we in some way we offer workshops, but we offer workshops to professionals and also supports and assistance to academics. So I think from my background as well. So what I feel that perhaps my approach to how people should learn is through like similar to yours, like through conversations and through social interactions. And that's how we can in some way co-create knowledge and co-construct knowledge. It's through that social interactions. It's also through that experience and the embodiment of, what we are interacting with. It's also help us to learn certain things. So I think maybe with this, I guess with this must be like a difference between student and learning centeredness, where student centeredness is solely focused on students, and the learning centeredness I'm assuming focusing on learning. But I think, there are certain situations where I feel like, yes, there is, students should be at the center of the learning, but at the end of the day, I think learning is the most important. I mean, you can, student can learn something. Student can be at the center, but if they do not have the foundations or they do not have the basics, they might not necessarily know how they can start their learning journey. So for me, I personally lean towards more of learning centeredness, because at the end of the day, it's about the learning journey. At the end of the day, it's about how we can create that experience of that impactful learning. But yeah, similarly, I feel like, learning is also through that constructions and the interactions and the social interactions, engagement with others. Sorry, Christine, do you want to go ahead?
So I'm in the unique position where I'm not allowed to interact with students.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so for me, learning centered, I'm kind of forced to be very good at it, but I also try to make learning accessible to the students in the sense of we're building the degree for the SMEs, and we go through it. And if I don't see myself being able to do that activity or learn through this, I would ask the subject matter expert who is in charge of designing the material to clarify, and then we would tweak the content a bit to allow for the student um, to not make it confusing to the student. So it's a bit of a balance between both. You can have learning on its own, but if you don't have the context of the student in mind when you're actually designing it, it also makes it really difficult to make sure that they have what they need to be able to learn.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, sometimes, it works with one group of students, but the same kind of content or the same kind of instructions might not work for another. So, as you said, it's also important to understand the context of where the student is and where the students are and the group of students that you're getting for that. And I think you also, Christine, you also a learning experience designer. So I think
Yes.
that's for us, the missing gap is not having that contextual understanding or that true reality of what is happening. And that is a challenge, I feel, for us as well. Much we can say, so much we can advise, so much things, and we can enable so many things. But if we don't understand the students and what is happening there and their context, their identities, and their background, it's so hard to create that, that experiential learning we want. Thanks,
Yes.
Christine.
Yeah, maybe we can hear from others.
Yeah.
We have Shami, so there we have Siamangai and Linda.
Hi, everyone. So I'm not really interacting with students directly at the moment. I'm doing research, but I have lectured in the past. And I think I've tended to have a blended approach where I take a little bit from each of the three, not that I've really been stuck on one. And I think that's particularly important in the context that I've had to lecture in, which is in Zimbabwe, where a lot of the students aren't going to have access to the resources, and it's not just we don't have certain books in the library. It's also we don't necessarily have data at home to access these things. When we're on campus, maybe there's no power. So I think you as a lecturer just need to, I guess, have more work on your plate and be very intentional about how you package the learning and the types of resources that you then distribute. So, focusing on the student, focusing on the learning itself, and then the teaching. The other thing that I really had to consider the last time that I found myself teaching, I was taking a master's class, and all my students were employed, and it was a block release type of system. So we have lectures for the 2 weeks, but for the most part, we try and meet virtually and then have kind of like a crash course over the weekend because that's where everyone's free. So there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to that. Yeah, besides that, I like Elizabeth, have played a bit of a role in the student support space. And then within that space, it's mostly been the student-centered, also focusing a little bit on the learning aspect of things. Yeah.
I'll go if that's okay. I'm Linda. I've been lecturing at WITS for 30 years, so a lot of experience. And I can honestly say that if I look at the teaching, student, or learning centered, I've probably done all three. Started off, I'm pretty sure, with teaching centered, because that's kind of what you sort of think you have to do. I was instrumental in getting the Road to Success going in the Commerce Law and Management faculty, so very much changed one's view about the role of students and where they are. But I think that we can't have a one-size-fits-all approach for everything, because, for example, Elizabeth says she's dealing with students, often individually or small groups. When we have people with massive classes, it's quite difficult to do a student-centered approach. And I think then possibly the better approach would be a learning-centered approach. So I think I don't believe we can just have one approach. I think it very much depends on the circumstances. And as Shamiso said, depending on student circumstances as well. It was very interesting to hear the lady from the UK, and we sometimes think in South Africa we are the only ones with issues, and then the reality is around the world people have the same issues. I very clearly remember at the beginning of COVID doing a poll of my students, and a student telling me I only have access to the internet in the middle of the night, in the middle of the road. How could we possibly have a teaching-centered approach in something like that? It's actually impossible. So yes, I think even a learning-centered is difficult. So yes, I think my comment here is that we can't do one approach. It very much depends on circumstances. Thank you.
Yeah, very true. The context matters. Although you'd find maybe a certain approach dominating more than the other, but there's no way you can avoid or you can exclude the learning aspect, especially in my case where I want to know where students are in terms of what helped them learn and what did they do or what did they not do. Hence, maybe they failed a particular course and what help they need at that particular point in time. So it's about understanding their